first 2 cases. So in Oklahoma, you can post a bond, and he had posted large bonds to be on bond.
Wow.
So that's, I mean, when you're selling pills for $1 a pill, you're making some money, so he could be on bond.
Wow.
And the first 2 times he was busted, they were much smaller amounts. It was nothing like the 1,000 pill situation.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Mark Garber, and I got a question, I guess, for all of you. But before my question, I want to commend each of you. I know this is a tough job, and commendation to all of you for your expertise and the training you go through and what you have to live with every day. I've got so many questions, it's hard to keep them to 1 or 2. Number one, I guess, why would anybody take this stuff? Why, what are you all seeing, and why, what are the people telling you as to why they would take it?
Okay. I'll add a little bit, and by no means am I a medical expert here. Addiction's a beast. And any type of addiction is. But we look at how addictive our opioids are, and it's so much more significant than a lot of the other drugs out there. To your question of why would they take it, and I'm assuming it's because knowing what the end result could be, it's the addictiveness of it. The down, coming down off of an opioid addiction, not too long, 7, 8, 9, 10 days until most of the cravings and stuff are going away. The night sweats, the tremors and stuff, but they don't want to get to that point because it's that bad. It's just it's hard for anybody out there, even me. It's hard for any of us that don't have some sort of an addiction to understand that. But when we work at it every day and stuff, that's what we see, because we ask the same questions. I would ask the exact same question. If it's going to kill the client, why would you take it? Why would you push it? Why would our cartels push it up here? The cartels can do whatever's going to make them money. So we'll just get past that factor. It doesn't matter if it's green beans or methamphetamine or fentanyl. They're going to do whatever makes them money. But right now in America, it's drugs and primarily fentanyl. All we see right now. So.
Well, obviously, that's a serious issue, addiction. Mr. DA, these cartel runners, if they run them through Bartlesville, I hope you classify them as murderers also, and try them in that category. My second question probably goes to Mr. Hogg. Each of you, in one way or another, mentioned marijuana to an extent, and I don't want to get into anything political, but obviously, Mr. Hawk, you have a big job looking at the marijuana issue today in Oklahoma. I got a report today from the Oklahoma Marijuana Board, or whatever they call it, that said there's 400,000 licenses already for users under the medical classification, and there's close to 12,000 people working in that field today. That's not to say how many people here in Bartlesville. We've got a marijuana shop on about every corner, it seems like. And I don't want to prejudge those people taking marijuana. I even have a marijuana card because of an illness. But I'm just curious, what is the problem going to look like? What's your problem going to look like? What is all of your problem going to look like if in March we go to a marijuana system just almost like buying it at Walmart, which I'm not even sure what you classify that is. It's probably recreational marijuana, like some of the other states have. Can that issue push us even into more opioid problems we have, and turning into fentanyl or whatever the next drug is that's gonna kill us all. I just ask your opinion of that.
Okay. Well, what I took from that was you're asking, is marijuana gonna create more addicts? In my opinion is yes. I do think that once someone starts down that slope of drug use of any kind, it's easier to go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And, of course, I come across people all day long that wanna, tell me about marijuana, but I deal with the users day in, day out, and so do my agents. And, I see it, and yes, I do believe if the marijuana industry expands in Oklahoma, I think that we're gonna have a much larger problem with every other drug, because there's collateral from everything. And seeing the way that the marijuana industry has gone here, and just the problems that we're having with the illegal grows, and even some of the grows that are legitimate, the way that they're doing them, and it invites organized crime. It invites a lot of the things that people didn't really give a lot of thought to when they passed this. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Obviously, it's gonna get worse.
Agent Hawk, can you touch a little bit, we talked a little bit early about, the THC levels, with marijuana today versus 10 years ago?
Sure. I mean, the THC, they've engineered marijuana to the point that the THC levels are they're in the 80s and 90%, whereas before the stuff that we all heard about in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, I'm kind of dating myself, but that was all 3% to 7%, and now we're approaching almost consistently 90% levels. Am I right? Yeah. And so that's been the latest is we've been creeping up. The THC levels, the terpenes that are involved with the marijuana that they're engineering and growing like that is it's far more dangerous. There's psychosis involved. There's things that, like I said, people don't really consider. It's not the mom and pop operations that everybody thinks. That's it's like I said, it's organized crime, and it's designed to make money. They're engineering this drug to get people to use it, and obviously.
Let's see here. Feeling like Phil's on here.
Hello, I had a question. The first thing I just wanted to say though is that I think I have met with Andrew Ward before at the Bartlesville Police Department. I am, along with Amber Sanders, my son also had an overdose on January 23rd. He was one of the 4. He did survive, but I will tell you that we got very lucky. When I found him, he was dead. And so my husband gave him CPR and brought him back, and we were very, very lucky. He was on a ventilator for 2 days, and he is fine now. He is at OSU, and he did not have any repercussions, but there could have been 300 overdose deaths on that chart you had, and not 299. So, and one thing I did want to say, when Martin Garber, you talked about why, I will say from my perspective of having a 17-year-old who did this, and I've talked to Amber with Zach, with these young kids, some of it is experimentation. With my son, I will say that he will even say that he was straight edge. He was on the swim team, and in a 3-month period, he went from experimenting to me finding him dead in his bed. That was a 3-month time period. So we talk about people who have addiction problems that this gets to, but I'm telling you, this could be a
those numbers that I pulled, those are our Narcan administrations, so when I go back and have to look at the charts, it's, even for like, also just cardiac arrest, that we've got no reason of knowing why, we're pushing Narcan. So,
So my son wouldn't have been on that because it was the emergency, it was the ambulance that gave him the Narcan, it wasn't the officer. Would that be correct?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So that, when that happened with my son, the, ambulance got there first, so
Right.
they gave him the Narcan, so he wouldn't be included in that number.
No, he would have been included in that.
Okay,
Yeah, this-
even though they
this-
didn't give him the Narcan?
Right, no, this is for the EMS, so anytime that the ambulance services administer the Narcan, that's,
Okay.
well,
And then, my other question was, how many, like, the younger kids, what is the percentage that you're seeing that, is it growing with the younger kids?
absolutely. And I'm sorry, I can't remember who was saying, talking about, us administering, or they were administered, or I think it was Jim. Because we had one patient that it was multiple times within, 1 month period, and I believe they were teenagers, so they just, I've seen as low as 14 years old, all the way, like I said, up into the, 50s, 60s. It doesn't discriminate, it's any age.
And then my last question would be for the whole panel, especially Bartlesville, and I was a school teacher, so my invested interest is that, preparing the kids to go into the world, if they die on this, then, it's for no good. So how are you working with the schools, how are you working with the community in an invested effort to make sure that we're educating the kids, the parents, because you guys aren't gonna be able to do it all yourself. How are we gonna get it so that, because I didn't know, I didn't even know what fentanyl was. And so this was a complete surprise to me, and thank you so much. And thank you for doing this, I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah, we're in the process right now of finalizing the classes we're going to be putting on for the schools and all that. Making pamphlets, we're going to continue with our community meetings. We're just going to push out stuff on social media, anything that we can, anybody that has any ideas on how we can do better, please get with us. But we're going to start just by starting, probably going to start at Central Middle School area and then work our way to the high schools. And just hit every school we can, any event that we can, churches, small groups, anything, we'll come and do presentations. I think the key to this whole thing is going to be education. That's the only way we can do it.
Hey Jim, let me add something real quick to what she was asking there. So DEA actually has a campaign called One Pill Can Kill. I encourage all of you guys to look that up. You can hashtag it. It's a social media campaign that is absolutely phenomenal. And it goes to just what you're saying there with your son and with her son over there. That it's not an addict, it's experimentation that one pill can kill. So I'll start with that. You did have a question too about what is an overdose, how do they determine what qualifies as an overdose? I don't know if Dr. Bartlesville can answer that better. That might be a coding issue in the medical world. Overdose deaths are easily reported because they're reported by the medical examiner's office. What you're asking for are non-fatal overdoses is a little bit more difficult. I will say that at the Bureau of Narcotics, the medical examiner's office is required by law to report to us overdose deaths. There is also a law in place that all of our medical facilities are to report to us non-fatal overdoses. We don't get in compliance with that law very much. So the numbers that you see anywhere around the state of Oklahoma of non-fatal overdoses are probably going to be all over the map. There's no real, us as the Bureau of Narcotics should be the central repository for that number, and we just don't get it, and we don't get much compliance. But as far as what is an overdose, I don't know if Dr. Bartlesville has something to add on that, but I'd like to think that's where it's at as part of a coding issue or a medical diagnosis.
You're right. It's kind of hard to say. It's easy to discriminate from fatal ones, but then there's the gray area between. There's no hard and fast rule to say that this was a particular overdose. A lot of times it's at the discretion of the physician, but usually it's going to be trying to find that line between what's the difference between methamphetamine use and methamphetamine abuse or overdose. I feel like if you take a little methamphetamine, I feel like that's too much. So kind of along the same lines there is like, where do you find that line? Usually, when we're looking at a patient determining if they're overdosed, it's past the point of recreation. They've gone to the point where they are, very altered, their mentation is not what it normally should be, they are not able to answer questions, especially with fentanyl or other opioids, maybe the respirations, the breathing is much slower, or almost completely stopped. That's, the main issue with fentanyl is it stops your breathing. It has all these other side effects, but the main thing is that we worry about is your breathing. And so the breathing slows down. That's definitely gone, way too far past recreational. So there's no hard and fast rule to say, exactly, like, this is the line where the overdose is, but it's mostly upon the clinician, that's at the bedside looking at the patients, like, this went past that point of recreation to where we consider it overdose. Hope that helps.
Hi, my name is Billy Brown. Back in the 90s, I worked in the first-time juvenile offender program. That's when methamphetamine they were making it in the trunks of cars out in fields. And one of the things that we learned then was you could tell when someone was making it because of the smell. Do we think that fentanyl is going to, in Bartlesville, is going to be manufactured, or I know it's much less expensive now. I know it's coming across the border, as many have stated. But if it is manufactured, is there a way that we can tell in our neighborhoods as we could with methamphetamine?
As far as the manufacturing of fentanyl, it's way more complicated than methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is just simply, knocking off a piece of that molecule and so that it flows into the right receptor. But fentanyl is being manufactured by chemists in China, and it's being sold very, very cheap. The last I knew, it was DEA that came up with a number of $1,200 a pound for fentanyl, for a pound of it. And so that goes into the cartels, and then it comes across our border and into our communities. And that's what we're seeing. But as far as the manufacture of it, it's a little more complicated, and I'm sure, probably the doctor could speak more to that as far as the manufacture of it. The training I've been through, they showed us how they do it, but it's nothing that you can do in the trunk of a car.
Thank you all for your service. Seems to me as we're looking at two different sides. One is preventive treatment and taking care of the victims, and then the preventative side. And from my limited experience of actually talking to people who are doing drugs, whether it be their parents or them, I keep hearing the term, well, I ain't no snitch. And so I guess people feel like, if they call, they're going to be a snitch, and they're going to be ratted out, and then, somebody's going to be after them or something. My question is, I have two questions. One for you, Will, and congratulations. Is there like an anonymous tip line people can call and they know that they're not going to trace it to the person?
I'm embarrassed now. Ward, what's the Crime Stoppers number?
4026-338-4026, call that number.
Yeah, you call Crime Stoppers number, it's totally anonymous, and you can go from there.
Okay, so just call Crime Stoppers.
Right. If you want to be totally anonymous, you can call that. But as far as your question about the snitches, that makes it really hard to investigate some of these crimes when someone does overdose, because usually the person's friends will know where they got the pill from. But getting them to talk, because if they do talk, A, they can't get pills anymore, and B, they're able to snitch in the community. So towards your question about snitches, that does play a huge role in trying to prosecute drug dealers who are selling these pills to people who are overdosing.
Okay, my second question is for everybody here. How many of you know of a house in your neighborhood or proximity in the country or whatever, where you know there's drug sales going on there? How many of you who have raised your hand have made a call? Keep it up.
Mr. Drake, I don't think that the general public understands how State Question 780 and 781 change the way you prosecute drug crimes, and not necessarily fentanyl specific, but other drugs that are causing problems in our community. Could you explain to them how those two state questions that passed changed the way that your office can prosecute drug crimes?
Thank you,
I'm talking
Judge.
about possession.
Thank you, Judge Thomas, for that question. If you have, I'm sure about jury duty, Judge Thomas is back here in the last row here. Well, state question 780 is the state question that 60% of people in Washington County voted for, that resulted in methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, the date rape drugs, and marijuana becoming misdemeanors. It's made it really hard to get people who are using methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine into any kind of, we used to put in drug court, an alternative, DOC program called drug court. You can't go to those drug court program now because they're no longer felonies. That's created a problem. Right now, just basically, if we arrest you outside right now for possession of methamphetamine, it's not, trafficking away methamphetamine, which is a significant amount. It's a misdemeanor. You're gonna do a couple days in county jail, and we'll have you do a drug and alcohol evaluation. Before 780, we'd put you in drug court and have you do a huge long 2-year program. You see Judge Thomas every week and hang out with her and take random UAs and things like that. 780 and 781, which concerns property crimes, has made it where there is no, people are not being held accountable for committing lower level drug crimes and for property crimes that some of them are, I think, higher level property crimes, but they're just not being held accountable right now because they're all misdemeanor crimes. I think it's affected everything dramatically as far as, I know we're trying to put anybody in prison, but it also eliminated all those alternative drug programs we've had throughout the state of Oklahoma. I may not answer the question, I don't know.
Did you just say that we had a drug that when they were in drugs, did you put them in rehab and people voted against it?
Well, I didn't say rehab. Drug court, part of drug court, I should back up, this is the wrong forum for this probably. But drug court is an alternative to the Department of Corrections program where if you go to drug court, you pass drug court, you don't go to prison. If you fail drug court, you go to prison. Kind of a situation. But in state question 780 said, it's voted people, and it said that if marijuana, methamphetamine, all those drugs, heroin, cocaine, the date rape drugs, that they're no longer going to be felonies. They're always going to be misdemeanor cases unless it arises in trafficking way. That's what 780 did.
It's too bad that when you have a druggie, that you cannot send them to court, to a drug rehabilitation for at least 3 years so they can work it out. Because it's going to take them about 3 years to get the drugs and want help, because they may have mental issues also. It's too bad that the law cannot be changed.
But it can be changed. You have to contact the legislature and have them change it. I can tell you, the legislature thinks the DAs are all overreactive, old-fashioned, trying to fill the prisons up full of people. We're not for users of methamphetamine and other illicit drugs. But that's how we've been painted the last 5-6 years. So it's going to take you all to do that. We can't. Nobody listens to us right now about that.
Real quick, I have some individuals here that maybe can shed a little bit of light on, especially Mr. Garber's question, and what it's like and what it takes to recover.
I'm Nikki, and I'm recovering addict. I've been clean from fentanyl for 251 days as of today.
know anybody that needs to go? CR, everything, my sponsor is here, she's the reason I'm doing this. It's not cool, she left. I'm really nervous right now. Okay, so I went to rehab in April with my baby. We came out after 4 months. I've been living life. I work full-time pretty much. And I finished EMT school in about 3 weeks now, so by next year I should hopefully have a job showing people that you don't have to live in addiction your whole life. I want to promote this. Like, this is what I want to do now. I want to live in recovery.
I just wanted to make a comment that's more of a statement. I spent the early, I'm sorry if I get emotional, the early 2000s, the first 8 years of the 2000s in Bartlesville, Dewey, and Nowata schools doing prevention education. Every day I was in one school for the full day, talking to kids about drugs and alcohol through the Cherokee Nation and the Washington County Anti-Drug Network. It's unfortunate that I am now experiencing this with my grandson. I am Zachary's grandmother. But I just really, we have some very powerful people up here that can make really powerful changes. And we did good work in talking to our children in Bartlesville and Dewey and Nowata about drugs and alcohol through that prevention. You know, with this being an epidemic, there's going to be money and funding for that again. And I would just really for the powers that be that can make these changes, get those people back in the school. I'm excited that you're going to do assemblies, but I can tell you from being in the schools with these kids, assemblies aren't going to do anything. They need somebody there every week talking to them about drugs and alcohol and their choices. I don't know how many times after the class I would have somebody come up and ask me questions. They would call me where I was working, and so I have heard over and over again people say educate, 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 and I have been an educator in the schools for drugs and alcohol, and I will tell you it works.
Thank you all. Nikki, way to go. Your introduction to the stats from California where elephant tranquilizers were seized, that kind of hit home. I'm from that region, and I served in San Bernardino during the Phoenix program that was eventually dissolved because of lack of funding. My concern here is the increase of course, the increase of users, but more so the increase of deaths from drug abuse. So my question to you, given the recent midterms and judges entered into or elected into their office, where is the hope? Is it in law enforcement? Is it in intervention with medium security clinics where recovery can be enhanced? Where do you see the quickest resolve happening in our near future or long term?
I think your question was already good.
For me, the answer is in everything. It's in education, in our schools, it's in our families, to talk with everybody, it's with law enforcement, to work with one another, to do our job. It's with us working with prosecution, to sit there and prosecute the people that are bringing the drugs across the border and the organizations and taking down the cartels. cartels, to hopefully you guys can maybe change the law where they can do drug court again for the people that get caught with user amounts. That they can go into drug court and they can seek help than just getting slapped on the wrist, in my opinion. And then just still using again until they're caught with 1,000 in 30s and still affecting their communities. It's all of us working together to solve this problem. It's just not a one simple solution. Hopefully that answers the question, but that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Follow up if I may, real quick. In California, they did have early release, and no bail passed, which created a huge mess. District Attorney Drake, do you see changes on the near, or in the near future that would reinforce these laws that you're possibly with?
Well, as far as changing, going back on 780, I could foresee in a year, I think everyone's about tired of the methamphetamine that's just as bad as fentanyl is, but I think we're all kind of tired of that. We're tired of this, the constant rotation of people using methamphetamine and, stealing things and all these things and repercussions. I think you're gonna see legislature this term, someone file a bill that if someone is on their second or third or fourth methamphetamine charge, it's gonna be a felony, get them in a drug court type program. I've had people here, there's a guy in our jail right now, in the last 5 years, he's probably on his